During its occupation of Taiwan, the Japanese colonial government from 1937 to 1945 launched the Japanization campaign, Kominka movement, forcing community members to speak Japanese and adopt Japanese names. After the Kuomintang government took over power, it formed the Mandarin Promotion Council and enacted a law which banned the use of indigenous languages from 1950 to 1971. Now, only 30% of the 480,000 indigenous people in Taiwan can speak their own languages fluently.
The people who are teaching right now all went through the period when indigenous languages were banned. Back at the time, we were used to communicate with each other in our own language in the community. It is only nature that we speak in our language, but we were not allowed to do so. Our language seems to have been destroyed during the period. No one was permitted to speak our own language.
The situation has been changing since 20 years ago when the Taiwanese indigenous movement was launched to fight for the rights of indigenous people, starting with name rectification. Later on, the movement pushed the government to form the Council of Indigenous Peoples. In 2001, the CIP adopted the policy of reviving indigenous languages and eventually setting up the language certification system and provided programs to train indigenous language teachers. From 1937 to 2001 and up to the present, language teachers have become like tailors, using language as the tool to heal the wounds inflicted on present and future generations through several decades of injustice. In recent years, the rise of indigenous awareness has continued, and the number of recognized tribes has increased from 9 to 14, when some tribes were divided based on the distinction of language. But at the same time, the survival of a tribe is also closely linked to the application of its language.
If a language disappears, the tribe that used to speak the language will no longer be considered existent. So the number of indigenous tribes just might be reduced to 9 or even 2 or 3. In 30 or 50 years of time, Taiwan's indigenous culture could eventually die out. That's where the crisis is. So when we are promoting indigenous languages, the ultimate goal is to prevent the race from becoming extinct.
According to the statistics of UNESCO, the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, released in 2005, there were some 6,000 languages in the world, with half on the verge of extinction. On average, one language disappears every 2 weeks. The Taiwanese government recognizes 43 language dialects used by the 14 indigenous groups. Can the languages survive? Both the government and experts are now trying to work out a better policy to educate the young and preserve the indigenous languages. TITV Weekly.